What's going on, everybody? I'm Vulkan, and today we're talking about the First Descendant. Now, this is a new looter shooter from Nexon Games, and if you're someone who likes Warframe, Destiny, or Outriders, then I would highly recommend sticking around because you might like what you see. So to get us started, let's talk about the main feature that this game brings to the table, and that's going to be called your heroes or your characters. Now, these are called Descendants. So these are characters that you can unlock and play as. Each have their own skills, stats, and unique playstyle. Some are better at certain roles than others, so you do need to be sort of strategic with your resources to make the most out of each unlock. Now, before we get to the unlock process, I did want to give a quick tour of each Descendant. So first up is Lepic. This is your typical soldier character. He specializes in grenades, and he comes with an arm launcher that can nuke and burn enemies. Now, his passive trait does give him a special get out of jail free card if you take lethal damage. Ajax is our tank. He's basically a Void Titan from Destiny. He can create shields to protect allies, and his passive allows him to accumulate void energy when he takes damage. And then once you accumulate enough, he consumes the energy and enhances his skills. Viessa is our Frost Mage. She can freeze enemies and control the battlefield. Her passive allows her to summon ice spheres that orbit and deal damage to nearby enemies. So essentially, those are our first three starter heroes. Now, these different characters or descendants, they all have the same stats, and they really just give you a starting template. Lepic, Ajax, and Viessa. They sort of mirror how Destiny has theirs set up as well. Now, the next one is Freyna. So Freyna is a poison caster. She has lower shields and health than others, but she can quickly inflict high amounts of damage via poison to groups of enemies. Now, her passive increases all damage done to enemies inflicted with poison. Next, we have Bunny. So Bunny is essentially the Energizer Rabbit. She's built to be constantly in motion, and her skills require you to do so, because as you move, you generate electricity, which is a special resource that allows you to cast skills. Now, Sharon is a trickster assassin, and her playstyle revolves around camouflage and ambushing enemies. She can deal huge amounts of damage if the enemy is targeting another player, and honestly, that's sort of the way you really want to use her. Now, if you like turrets, then Jaber is probably the one for you. So he can summon a healing turret and a damage turret. And then his passive is a pretty good one. It allows you to get an extra damage increase if you have both turrets summoned at the same time. Now, Blair is a fire specialized chef whose talent is placing and withdrawing pools of fire that are referred to as stoves. When Blair has any stoves dispatched, he deals increased fire damage. This character is one of the ones I'm very excited to try out because I like that kit, and I like his whole special ability, which is like this giant meteor he'll throw down, and it can hit enemies and explode and deal tons of different damage. Next, we have Glay. It's not Gray, it's Glay, and she's an incredibly interesting one. So she has 0 defense and incredibly low health, but her skills allow her to go berserk and then deal extra damage while also siphoning health from nearby enemies. Now, her playstyle is very Jekyll and Hyde. You need to know when to berserk and then when to return to normal in order to maximize her strengths. And then the last one we have is Ultimate Lepic. Now, this is basically Lepic with slightly increased stats and a helmet instead of no helmet. To me, this is the equivalent of Prime Warframes. So be aware there's probably going to be ultimate versions of all of these different Descendants. So that's a look at who you can play as, but how do you actually unlock new ones beyond the first 3? Well, that is where Xenia, the Descendant research vendor, comes into play. So for Warframe fans, this is going to seem very similar. Xenia allows you to research new characters as long as you have the correct materials. Now, during the beta, a new hero took about 8 hours to research and unlocked, though you could use premium currency to speed up that unlock process. Now, you're probably asking, where can I get the materials to unlock these new heroes, these new Descendants? Well, they come from a few places. You can directly buy them with premium currency, or you can farm their materials from boss fights, just like Warframe. Now, the farming route obviously takes much longer. I was not able to get a full kind of kit to unlock a new character by just farming bosses during my time with the beta. I wasn't. I think I got 1 drop, and that was about it. So you're probably thinking, okay, that's 2 times, Vulkan, you've mentioned premium currency. So when you go ahead and we talk about that, that's the next thing. we need to dive into. So the First Descendant is a free-to-play game from Nexon. Now, Nexon are the folks behind MapleStory. Please don't butcher me for saying this. Mabinogi, I think that's what it is. I've seen it on my Xbox a couple times. Vindictus, used to play that game a ton back in the day, and pretty much a ton of other free-to-play games. Now, all of these games have no barrier to entry, but they are equipped with cash shops full of different things for you to buy. Now, please don't get it twisted, right? This game will have some form of purchasable item. I'm not saying First Descendant is going to be immune to that, but looking at Nexon's history, I'm guessing that First Descendant is going to fall into the whole pay for convenience side of things. This is where you can spend real world money to speed up unlocks, progression, something like that. I mean, looking at MapleStory as the outlier, where according to players, you could buy your way all the way up to the top, there is a chance that TFD does head in that direction, but honestly, I doubt it. I think that would be an absolute death sentence for any lasting impact this game would have. So what I think we'll see are skins, new characters you can purchase like the Ultimate Lepic, and time-cutting purchases. So honestly, to me, I really wish they would make the game $60 with a DLC every year. I'd be okay with that. But going into this, the door is sort of wide open, and we don't know truly how pay to win or for convenience TFD is going to be. So anyway, that's the monetization plan, but we do have a few more things to talk about before wrapping this thing up, and we need to jump into weapons. So weapons in the First Descendant remind me a lot of a mix between Destiny and Outriders. On one hand, you have some otherworldly looking firearms, just crazy things made of like bones and steel and things fused together. But then on the other hand, you have like this typical modern day design of just a classic like AR or a classic rifle. So it's really neat to see both of these things blended together, but visuals aren't the only thing that determines a weapon. Each item needs to come with something neat. So each weapon does come equipped with base stats and randomized stats. Now the randomized stats are well designed. These are going to be chase items for builds, for characters, for play styles. So for instance, if we had to stick with Viessa, right, who's our Frost Mage or Frost Witch, we could load up on ice attack bonuses and skill cooldown reductions. This would give us a lot more casts of our frost skills, which means more ice spheres for buffs and damage. And each Descendant can equip up to 3 weapons and 4 gadget slots. Now these gadget slots were, honestly, they're a pretty big letdown. I was very disappointed to see the same 3 stats on each piece, no matter the rarity: defense, max HP, and shield. I really was hoping that we would see some items get some more personality, because for now, I mean, they're pretty lame compared to weapons. It's just survivability stats, and honestly, if you just pick one, like, oh, I want to go all into max HP, then all you do is look, oh, this one has more, this one has less. There's no decision making behind it other than up arrow, down arrow. And to me, that's incredibly boring, and I really hope that they get some form of update before release. Okay, so that's the firepower of a build. Next, we need to look at another system heavily inspired by Warframe, and those are runes. So runes are ways you can add passive effects to your weapon and your Descendant. Now these range from simple increases to like plus 5% crit, to more specific ones like whenever you defeat an electrocuted enemy, chain lightning will strike nearby enemies. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to customizing builds. Being able to swap around your runes and then kit out your character to fulfill whatever build you have planned is always welcomed in looters. And these runes are also pretty easy to understand, which is always great. So each rune comes with a type, depicted by the symbol in the upper right hand corner. Next to that is a number. Now this shows how much that rune costs. At the very top of your screen, you have rune capacity. This shows how many runes you can equip. So far so good, right? Well, you can also assign rune symbols to slots by using a special currency called an energy activator. Now, if you match up the slot type to the rune type, that rune will cost less to equip. So you can kind of read the writing on the wall here, right? You want to equip all the slots with rune symbols so you can equip more powerful runes to take your build to the next level. It's just a matching game. At first, you don't really have anything in those slots, and then over time, you're going to have a completely personalized rune grid that you can then use to build your character. Now that's a very high overview. There are ways to increase your capacity as well, so don't feel like you're always stuck with such a low number. You can enhance runes, combine runes, dismantle runes. There's a ton you can do with this system. I'll get into it in a further video, but this is something that I think really needs to be talked about because I think it's going to be a really cool piece. Now, those are all the systems that we had access to that helped out for building your character, but the next thing I want to talk about is the world, missions, and Void Intercept, aka boss battles. So the world of First Descendant is gorgeous. It's visually great. I was immediately like, oh man, this is fantastic. I could spend so much time here. Let's go. But guys, it is the most boring, empty world I've ever seen in a looter. I ran for 4 to 5 minutes without seeing a single enemy. Now, outside of missions, there just is not anything to do out in the world. There aren't any chests, there are no puzzles, there are no secrets, there are hardly any enemies, there's just nothing. It's a complete waste of design, it's a complete waste of effort, structure, art assets, and it serves absolutely no purpose. They really need to fill this thing up, otherwise this game won't last. I mean, that's the world, and honestly, just don't let us explore it then. Put us all in the hub and let us sit in the hub and just launch missions from there if you're not going to put anything out for us to actually go interact with. So that's the world. Next thing I want to talk about are missions. So while these make sense and they do serve a purpose, again, they're very bland and thoughtless. You run from point to point slaying groups of enemies while defending or attacking totems or items. It really just lacks any form of creativity, and if it weren't for the really kind of fun gameplay and skill system, I don't know if I would have kept playing. I really don't. They need to bring some extra creativity and oomph to these missions, because right now it's like chaining together a bunch of bounties in Destiny, and honestly, that's a terrible, terrible thought and awful game plan. Now, the last point is, and you guessed it, this is a big area of improvement for the game as well. Void Intercept, aka boss battles. So Void Intercept is a cool concept. You dive into the void to take on a boss, right? You need to go beat them on their home turf. Now, if you slay them, you get tons of loot and you're able to progress your character. But just like the world and missions, these bosses were incredibly lackluster. They had no mechanics to work through. It was just don't get hit by their abilities and continue shooting at them. They were a giant loot pinata. The one plus here is the fact they weren't damage sponges. We had a bunny come in that was level like 30 and just hit the boss once and they exploded and died. It was great for me because I got a ton of loot. So that's a positive that they're not these big sponges that take hours and they scale and everything. It's just ridiculous. But beyond that, yeah, there really isn't anything else. Now, I'm going to give the game the benefit of the doubt, right? These were low-level fights. Maybe this is how they were designed to be a little bit more kind of beginner-friendly to ramp you up into these Void Intercepts. But at the end of the day, if boss fights don't pick up any extra personality as you level up and take on more difficult ones, I think this is going to be bad news because people aren't going to want to go in and just whack a pinata once and get a bunch of loot, you know, rinse, repeat. That's just... People do want challenge no matter how much they say they don't. So all in all, the First Descendant is a looter shooter with a solid foundation. It does. It has a good core. It has good bones. It's one that can easily be rectified since this was just a beta, so they can take all this feedback and go build this thing up. Now, as long as they continue building on the strengths they have in itemization, Descendants, and runes, and then improve those weaknesses, which are the world missions and Void Intercepts, then they should be fine. If not, the First Descendant could be the last Descendant. So guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.